Well, good evening and welcome. Tonight's committee meeting is going to paint a picture that will help us to better understand the issue of child sex trafficking. This will provide us with context for the Summerlin Rotary Club's Child Sex Trafficking Awareness Campaign in Clark County that the committee is developing and will implement by July of 2021. That is our hope. We have three speakers tonight who will enlighten us about different aspects of child sex trafficking. Our first speaker we're going to introduce, sex trafficking is rampant in the United States, but remains an extremely complicated and overwhelming subject for many. And Roger was referring to that. However, once you understand what sex trafficking truly looks like, your eyes will be open to the abuse of vulnerable individuals and children throughout our community, empowering you to help. Our speaker used her experiences both as a victim and advocate to teach thousands of people across the country about the reality of domestic sex trafficking in the United States. Kimberly Mall is a child sex trafficking survivor turned policy expert and victims' rights advocate. She has more than a decade of experience, and Kimberly uses her work with victims of violence against women, which includes over 400 sex trafficking victims through direct services or resources, to influence policymakers and legislators in creating trauma-informed, victim-focused policy. She has helped write, sponsor, and advocate for more than 100 laws on human trafficking, sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse, and victims' rights across the country. She's recognized nationally as both a survivor leader and policy expert in anti-sex trafficking movement, and has a consulting business to assist organizations and government agencies to better their policies and practices around sexual violence. Kimberly has a bachelor's degree in public policy and a master's in victim services and management. And she recently located here to Las Vegas with her partner and two dogs. So let's welcome Kimberly Mall. Kimberly, you can hit the share button if you have a PowerPoint. And then
okay, perfect. Thank you. I want to thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to have kind of whimsically found my way to the Summerlin Rotary Group. I just moved to like right outside Summerlin here in Las Vegas, so it just all fell together. So I know I only have about 10 to 12 minutes, so I would like to do a couple things. First, I'm going to share with you why awareness campaigns like this are so important as a survivor. Next, I'm going to share with you a video that I made, essentially at the behest of other survivors, that I think is very pertinent to this conversation. And then lastly, a little bit real quick, if we have time, about the language and words we use in these campaigns and when we're talking about the subject and why that's important. So first, let me tell you about why campaigns like this are so important to not only survivors, but me personally. So back in 2007, I was in a social club meeting. I was a realtor back in Texas, and we had a guest speaker come to talk to us about our monthly subject, talk. And this person was a Rotarian. And she came to talk to us about this horrible thing that was happening in these faraway places like Cambodia and Thailand to all these children. And while she's speaking, I'm sitting in this audience going, but wait, that's what happened to me. And it's at that point in my life, I realized there was a name for what had happened to me. And that was child sex trafficking. And I tell people that's the moment in my life where I really went from being a victim to a survivor, because I really felt that if there was a name for what happened to me, then I wasn't alone. And I felt relief in that. But also in that same instant, I realized that if there was a name for it and I wasn't alone, then I also felt anger, because that meant there were more more kids and more people just like me. And so my life really changed. I left my life of being a multi-million-dollar producing realtor and went back to school, decided I was going to become an attorney, and then fell in love with policy and ended up going that way. So now I do work around the country, consulting, doing policy. I do a lot of speaking. I actually just met with Microsoft earlier today. I'm going to be speaking to 150,000 of their employees, which is exciting about trafficking. So that's very exciting. And so now what I do is help educate and really try to shape policy and laws around the country. But the issue that I had at the beginning was really for the first few years after I realized there was a name for it and what had happened to me, but I really didn't still understand. I really became passionate about sex trafficking, but I couldn't really articulate to my friends why. So I was getting all these women in my social club group all really riled up about it, and we have to work on this, and we have to help, and we need to do education, and we need to pass out flyers, and we need to help women, and we need to do all these things. But I would tell people, I was almost trafficked. And I knew what had happened was child pornography. That's not what we call it anymore, but child pornography. And I knew I had been assaulted and these other things. And so, but I thought because everything I was seeing and everything that's being associated with it were all these images of, I hadn't been kidnapped. I hadn't been chained in a basement. I wasn't dirty. Essentially, I was taken, like we think of the movie Taken when we think of trafficking. I had been taken, but I was home for dinner every night with my family. And the more I got into it, the more I found out that that's actually pretty common for a lot of victims. And so it's something that I hadn't been taught. People weren't looking for it. Of course, it was back in the 90s, early 2000s. But still, even today, it's something that we really struggle with as survivors and survivor leaders around the country, is really trying to help shape the narrative of what people think and the images and the words we use when describing child sex trafficking, specifically domestic child sex trafficking here in the United States, of what images we use. The images we used 10, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, we are now strongly encouraging organizations and campaigns to steer away from, and helping shift the language and the storytelling that was used originally as a shock factor, and steer away from that to actually show what it actually looks like. So that way, not only people know what to look for, but also that way survivors and victims themselves can self-identify. Because I went for years saying I was almost a sex trafficking victim. I was almost taken victim, because it's not normal for an 11-year-old to be in, child orgies and being videotaped. That's not normal. That is child trafficking. But I thought because I had not been kidnapped, and I wasn't dirty, and I wasn't in a basement, and I wasn't, writing help me on my hands, that I was not a victim. And so we have to change the narrative in the picture of what that looks like. So I've got a video here that I created with some other survivors. It's just a really 3-minute video I'd like to show you. And hopefully that will help also kind of show you a little bit what we're trying to do as survivor leaders around the country. Michaela says you have to allow me to share my video or share my screen. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Kimberly with SexTraffingSpeaker.com, and welcome to my channel. Even during quarantine, I've noticed a lot of campaigns related to sex trafficking, which should be a great thing for survivors like me. In these campaigns, you see a lot of images like this, or maybe Society has it all wrong. It's time for you to adjust the image of sex trafficking in your mind. Actually, take it, crumple it up, and throw it away because it looks completely different than what you think it looks like. Sharing false and sensationalized images of sex trafficking hurts survivors. It hurts prosecutions, and most of all, it hurts victims. Because when you're sharing fake stories like wayfarers selling children in cabinets, no, they're not. Or I was almost sex trafficked in Target because someone was following me. Okay, Karen, he was going to rob you. He wasn't going to sex traffic you. When you share these stories and you share images like those, you're hurting victims. Because while people are looking for those things, they're missing the 5th grade boy on their son's soccer team who's being trafficked by his father. Or the woman 2 doors down from them who's being trafficked by her boyfriend while she's pregnant. Or their friend who has an addiction and is being exploited for sex. You see, when I was 11 and 12 and 13 years old, nobody was looking for me because they were looking for someone chained in a basement and not on their kid's soccer team. I'm back. Look, the truth is, y'all, I was taken, but I was home for dinner every night. Sex trafficking, even for children, doesn't look like what you think it does. And that's hard for people. Because the truth is, it's gonna hit home for a lot of you more than you're comfortable with. Whether it's someone that's being exploited, someone that's doing the exploiting, or more than likely, someone that's buying. I hope that you've learned something in this video. I hope you will continue.
Okay, so I hope that just shows a little bit of what we're trying to, and I say we, I mean survivor leaders, are trying to express and trying to get the message out. And a lot of us are consulting with the government and national organizations and things to help reshape how we make things look and how we get the message out. I know when I initially had my conversation with Michael, we talked about, he brought up, how in Vegas, how we have a lot of people that come in and, and buy children, and we have, people even flying children here in order, to sell them. And while those things do happen, the reality is that the majority of kids being sold in Vegas or in Nevada are Nevadan children. And the majority of people that are buying Nevadan children are Nevadans. And so, of course, we want to make it in our minds as our society of it's other people coming here to harm our kids, and it's other kids coming in to be harmed. The reality is, nope, it's our kids and it's our people doing it. And so that's a hard thing for, that's a harder thing to listen to and to accept, but that's really the message that we need to get out and that people need to understand, is that, I know Christina's going to talk, Christina's going to talk, but, we're building an entire community here, because we have Nevadan children that are being bought and sold. And just like, with this myth that the majority of the adult women that are being trafficked are being bought by tourists and by people visiting, when the reality is nope, they're actually being bought by Nevadans. It's the same for children. So we really need to look at that. We really need to try to understand that, and where y'all take that, I hope that y'all will reflect on it and hopefully, be able to use that to help shape your narrative. I would love to help and assist however I can. You know, I am a consultant, so usually I help organizations in a consulting role. But being that this is my home and this is my community, it's a little bit different here. So I am right here. I am a big fan of Rotary, like I said. My friend Leanne, she just passed away last year, was the president of Rotary at the time, back in my hometown. That is the one that, you know, helped me in a lot of ways, but really helped me understand what had happened to me and really got me to where I am now. So anyway, I can give back to Rotary. I'm here into our community. So, you know, we do have the 3rd largest school district in the country. And so we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of kids that do need help, and also a lot of kids that need to be educated as well. So thank you for letting me talk. Thank you for letting me share a little bit. I'm here if anyone has any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. We will have time for questions after the 3 speakers have finished. Christine Vela is the Executive Director of St. Jude's Ranch for Children in Boulder City, which was established about 50 years ago. She's a passionate, caring, dynamic person who values others and believes in the power of people coming together to solve complex social issues. That term goes back again to what Roger said, so it seems to be a recurring theme. It is important to ensure children and young people are safe and provided opportunities for healthy relationship, skills building, and that they are surrounded with people that support their dreams. Christine has more than 22 years of experience in social and human services. She holds a doctorate in public policy and a master's degree in public administration. Both are from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Christine will focus on St. Jude's Ranch services and programs that assist child trafficking victims. Christine?
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I see some familiar faces and some new people, so I look forward to speaking with you all, obviously, this evening and going forward. I wanted to share kind of 3 things. I, like Kimberly, have lots to say, but we'll work quickly to condense it into, you know, a short period of time. So I want to share a little bit about the work that we're doing at St. Jude's Ranch for Children. Kate has been an ongoing support to St. Jude's as one of our community advisory board members. So thanks, Kate, for your continued support. I want to share just a little bit about our programs, our existing programs, and then our pathway on how we got to wanting to care for child victims of sex trafficking. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to pull up just because it'll help me stay. I mean, I could talk about these things all evening, but I want to stay focused. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as it was mentioned, yes, St. Jude's Ranch for Children has been actually in Southern Nevada for 54 years. And we are incredibly honored and grateful that we have that longstanding relationship with the Southern Nevada community. Just as a point of reference, we are not connected to St. Jude, the Children's Research Hospital, in any way. It's pretty normal that people would get us confused because we share that same part of the name, and of course we take care of children, but we are not connected in any way. We have 3 locations, actually. We've grown over the last several years. So of course, this is a picture of our beautiful campus in Boulder City. We have 40 acres overlooking, of course, the beautiful Lake Mead. That is where our campus has always been. If you've never been there, it is open to the public. We have an awesome thrift store and a chapel. And of course, I welcome all of you if you'd like to come for a tour. We have 2 other locations in town, a homeless youth center, and then a 3rd office at Rainbow and Sahara. So this is, and I'm not going to read all this to you, and I'd be happy to send this out, but our mission has been the same over all 54 years. It is to transform the lives of abused and neglected children and young people by providing opportunities, empowering them to create new choices and new hope in a caring community. Now, the way we have been, that's been our same mission for all these years. How we do the work, of course, has morphed over the years because the needs of children continue to be much more complex. So, of course, our mission is huge. We want to break the cycle of abuse and neglect. We are not happy with just providing a home for a child or clinical services. Our goal beyond those initial services is to fundamentally break the cycle of abuse and neglect by really two primary things. One, increasing hope. And we're talking about hope in action, hope like Kimberly, right? Hope is, somebody taking all the challenges that they've had and use them as a sense of resiliency to change the world and make it better. But we know that hope by itself is not enough, that we have to pair that with healing. And so that's really what our commitment is. This is a quick overview of all of our programs at St. Jude's Ranch for Children. I certainly do not have enough time to talk about all of these things, but over the years, we have continually asked this community and asked ourselves, who else could we help? What other child is out in the community that nobody's creating programs for, and how do we go build that? And so all of the programs that are here, I mean, really, the ranch, the Boulder City campus has our therapeutic foster care program. We house up to 60 children. We are an accredited organization licensed by the county and actually across the state. And a lot of niche programming there, for example, our pregnant and parenting teen program. That's really where we started to recognize that young people, children, 18 and younger that are victims of sex trafficking will show up to us pregnant and not telling us the whole story. But once they start to build a trusting relationship with their foster parent or their caregiver, we start to peel back those layers. And much to like Kimberly's example, they start to learn that some of the life experiences they've had are not what we would hope for children, right? And that they in fact have been abused and neglected and exploited. We have homeless youth programs, we have clinical services, we have educational program. A lot of these things are really one of a kind, and I look forward to another opportunity later to tell you much more about those. In 2019, we served 572 children and young people across all of these programs, unduplicated. In 2020, we will certainly surpass 600 children and young people across all of our programs. I want to talk briefly about what I call the intersection. When we think about how do we combat child sex trafficking, and I commend you all for wanting to learn more about it. I commend a lot of people in this community for finally asking the question and recognizing that this, to Kimberly's point, is happening in our own community. And I certainly appreciate the work of international rescue organizations that are out in places like Cambodia or Thailand or Colombia rescuing children. I wholeheartedly appreciate the work they do. The work I'm talking about and Kimberly are talking about are literally our community's children. These are kids that live in our neighborhoods. I'm a mom, so these are my children that are at risk and or their best friends and families that are at risk across the country. The truth is I'm talking about Nevada's children, but it's the same for Californian children or all across the country. More than not, our own kids are being recruited and exploited on our streets by Nevadans, to Kimberly's point. But there's this intersection that exists between a child victim of complex trauma is really a young person that has experienced an array of abuse and neglect, unfortunately, in their life. And that includes child abuse and neglect. It includes adverse childhood experiences. It includes involvement with the juvenile justice and delinquency system, right? They're not just bad kids acting out. They're generally kids that are being, thrust into this world of trauma. It's young people that have experienced homelessness because of their family or as a youth. And indeed, child sex trafficking, in my opinion, and I know this is going to be bold, but in my opinion, child sex trafficking is an outcome of a system that does not take care of its child abuse and neglect victims, right? There is a pathway that if we don't intervene in a child's life as young as we know they're experiencing trauma, The problem is they will start to experience one or all four of these in a repeated cycle. I could talk about this a whole lot more, but I'm going to keep moving. We know child sex trafficking in the sense of terminology and the definitions are really important. So I hope as you are engaging in this awareness campaign that you recognize that child sex trafficking is the terminology we use. It is no longer things like child prostitution. Back in the day, that was terminology that would be used oftentimes to shame the child. But what we know is that trafficking and traffickers prey on children's vulnerabilities. And it doesn't matter if it's a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old with a bad attitude or who believes that they're choosing to do this. Minors and children cannot consent to being sold for sex. So we know that, right? This is a trafficking case, regardless of how a child or a young person considers themselves, right? That's that resiliency skill that has a lot of times young people believe that, oh, but he loves me and I'm choosing this. But we know that the psychological impact on a trafficking victim is very significant and very severe. We recognize that children with adverse childhood experiences go on to unfortunately continue the cycle if we don't intervene. And here's the rough part of that. Children in any one of those circles, if we don't help them, they go on to continue to be abused or to be an abuser. And so this is why it's so fundamentally important to break the cycle of abuse and neglect. In Nevada, Governor Sandoval, our previous governor, recognized that it was time for us to take some action. And he created the first coalition to prevent the commercial sexual exploitation of children, the CSEC coalition. That's actually where I met Kimberly because I was the coordinator for that coalition for about 2 years. What we knew during the time of preparing for the work of the coalition was a ton of research about what's happening in our state and what's happening across the country, and asking ourselves, you know, who's doing this work across the country? Is anybody doing it well? Where can we learn? So we know that Nevada is a major destination for child exploitation. Not only is it Nevadans, but in Las Vegas specifically, we do know that there is tourism here. And I would say it's shifting now, but historically more than ever. You know, it's adult Disneyland, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas on the backs of our children, right? It's a terrible supply and demand cycle. So I'm going to keep moving. The work of the coalition recognized some specific things that needed to be addressed in the strategic plan. And one was to provide a holistic continuum of care for CSEC, which is commercial sexually exploited children, as opposed to placing children in detention. So today, if at this very moment, law enforcement is engaging with a minor that they believe is a victim of child sex trafficking, the only place they have to take her is the juvenile detention facility. So just think about that for a moment. The child who is the victim, who is being sold, who's been exploited, who's been abused, psychologically, emotionally, been violated, been raped, all of those things is the person that ends up in detention. So probably you, like I, know that sends all the wrong messages about who's at fault. When in fact the child is a victim and should be treated as such, and the perpetrators of the crime must be held to justice, so the buyers of sex and the traffickers. But we know that in the state of Nevada and locally in Southern Nevada, we have no alternatives for those placements. I wanted to give you some quick stats. This is an infographic, which I'm happy to share any of this material with you. Arizona State University did an 8-year exploratory study that was just released in June in partnership with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. These were cases that only Metro was involved. So we know that sex trafficking is a hidden form of violence. There is no way that we even understand how many children are being trafficked. But in this particular report, 922 child victims were identified. This is a 3-page document. I only did a snapshot of the first page. You can see that the average range was from 11 years old. 11. Think about an 11-year-old that you know or love, a grandchild, a sibling, a niece or nephew, and imagine that some adult wants to have sex with an 11-year-old. I'd say we have a pretty significant problem. 28% were prior victims of sex trafficking. 902 of them were female. I mean, the information is really hard to digest, but the truth is we have to talk in the reality of what we know. And these are facts that were validated by Arizona State University in conjunction with our local police department. So here's where we are. St. Jude's Ranch for Children has the courage to stand with victims and say that we will create something that is an alternative to the juvenile delinquency or to juvenile detention facility. Judges and law enforcement and district attorneys and so many people working on these cases say, we agree now that children should not end up in detention. That was not the case 3 to 5 years ago. They still thought that the young person was sort of at fault for it. But what we know is now we must create the healing center. So the healing center will help us leverage our over 50-year history of providing residential care to children with complex trauma. We have proven programs. We are very proud of all the work that we do. We have a ton of partnerships to support this project. So what I want to share with you is about the healing center. So this picture here, if you've driven by our campus in Boulder City, you might not recognize that we have 40 acres of land. So we have a premium resource, which is land. So the existing residential program with that little red push pin there is where our current foster homes are. So we've got the 10 homes and our therapy building and all kinds of stuff there. But you can see that we have a ton of other land because indeed all of St. Jude's Ranch for Children is highlighted in that purple color. So there's an arrow going to the 10 acres that will be totally dedicated to the healing center. So here is a rendering of what will be the first of its kind residential program to provide hope and healing specifically to child victims of sex trafficking. Yay, thank you, Kimberly, I saw that. What we know is that children deserve a home. They do not deserve an institution. They do not need to be behind barbed wire, which is currently what happens when you're in detention. But our longstanding history is to provide a home. And so when you come out to the ranch, which you're all welcome to come, you'll see that we have beautiful homes. And so this is just following in line with a beautiful home, which is what children deserve, right? If any one of us, God forbid, had a child or someone we loved that needed this program, what would we want it to look like? What would we want it to feel like? That's exactly how we're building this program, right? If God forbid my children needed this. It will have an administration building with the first emergency shelter. So instead of going to detention, they will be able to come to us at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll have a multi-purpose building with an on-site school because these children need some space to heal and kind of relax and get deprogrammed from the life that they were living. But we need to support their goals, right? And so an on-site school and a computer lab and yoga and meditation room. We're talking about a tortoise habitat. We're talking about a community garden because see, healing doesn't happen when we're just sitting in therapy building. It's not just happening when we're, sitting around talking about our problems, but rather when we're out, the trails there, those will be walking trails, the little white paths, because healing happens when you're out on a walk and you're talking about things that happen. Healing happens when you're attending to maybe an abused animal or, attending to the community garden. Okay, I'm almost done. So I've got some other materials that I'd be happy to share with you all. We are in the capital campaign stage for the Healing Center. It will be 60 beds, which will be provided for this particular population. It will be person-centered, holistic, trauma-informed. It will be a restorative model. We believe in the strengths of all children and young people, even sex trafficking victims. The quote there right in the middle from a survivor says, "It's hard to break through to us. We have walls built up so high and everyone we've ever known has lied to us. hurt us, used us, and abused us. It takes time and trust. And that's exactly what we want to provide at the Healing Center. So for as low as $100, we are asking our community to partner with us to be a founding champion. Certainly there's lots of giving levels and ways that people can be involved, but the truth is this project does not belong to St. Jude's Ranch for Children. It is a project of the community. So I appreciate, an opportunity to share with you about the Healing Center. I feel like I'm talking super, super fast, which I am. I've probably gone over time, but I'm happy to answer any questions and be of support in any way. You're all welcome to come out. There's my email and my phone number. So I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you, Christina. We will again have questions at the end. Also, this session is being recorded, and we will put this on the club's YouTube channel, so you'll be able to view it again. The impetus for the Summerlin Rotary Club's Child Sex Trafficking Awareness Campaign in Clark County really had its genesis with Rotary District 5280 in the Los Angeles area. There are some 60 Rotary clubs under the umbrella of a Rotary district. In 2017, then District Governor Cozette Vergari established a child sex trafficking task force. I was her assistant governor for communications and worked with Cozette on the project. Cozette is a trust and estates and family law attorney in Los Angeles. She has partnered with Kimberly Napolitano, and their firm is Vergari and Napolitano. She's committed to the community and serves in leadership capacity in many civic organizations, including the Board of Trustees of the Westchester Rotary Foundation, Selective Service Board in the LA region, Coastal Area Chamber of Commerce, the Airport Marina Counseling Service, and the 1736 Family Crisis Center. She takes pride in her 22 years of membership in Rotary. Cozette continues to fight through the Child Sex Trafficking Task Force, which has partnered with businesses, government agencies, nonprofits, and individual advocates. They launched an initiative, Rotarians Fighting Human Trafficking, which is a resource for educating the public about child sex trafficking. Our club is now a member of that program. Let's welcome Cozette Vergari.
Thank you so much. And I've really appreciated Christina and Kimberly's comments to all of us. Much of what they have shared with you is common to the area of Los Angeles. And I think what I'm going to do, I'll share a couple of slides, but they have covered so much of what I normally talk about to raise awareness. And they have covered a lot of bases very well. So I'm going to talk to you, I think, more about what you can do through Rotary. And I want to give you a little bit of a background. I decided to go to law school because our district attorney, I was changing careers, and our district attorney was starting 2 new divisions for their prosecutors, and one was domestic violence crimes and the other was sex abuse crimes. And it motivated me to go to law school. So I ended up out of law school. You noticed Michael said, and by the way, Michael, I'm 25 years now this year, a Rotarian. Anyway, it was a long time ago that I went to law school, and I ended up practicing in the family law area, focused on domestic violence. And then, it's a very stressful area. I ended up being appointed from time to time as minor counsel to represent minor children in the midst of a family divorce and domestic violence going on, and I would actually be the attorney for the minor child or children of the family. And then I added the trust and estates. I called that sort of my insane side. It was so heartbreaking and so stressful. So I did take on the trust and estate side 50-50 to sort of have some downtime. I wouldn't litigate on that side. But the passion was always there. And when I joined Rotary and moved into a position of leadership, and as I had been selected to be the district governor, and I was very aware of what was happening in Los Angeles. Los Angeles area is one of the top 3 cities in the entire country for child sex trafficking. And still passionate about this issue. It became one of my major platforms in the district. And a couple of years before, we always know ahead a couple of years that we're going to be in that role. And so I worked with my governors that were in place a couple of years ahead of me. And I'm going to swing around quickly back to that as I created my path in District 5280. I also right now am on the board of the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, which is a worldwide Rotary collaboration. And I'm on the board. My board position, I represent North America. So that's one hat I wear on the board, but I also, because I am only one of 2 past district governors on the board, then my other area that I work with more specifically is how districts can put together a program like you're looking to put together. And whether it starts with one club, which is in a way how it started in our district, with my club being very supportive. But so I'm going to share with Michael, not at this moment, but I'm going to send you, and you'll remember this, Michael, Leading with Passion and Purpose, but through the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, the sort of proposed or possible or model that one could follow for the development of a program to raise awareness. So I also started in my district with putting together a forum before I was governor at Loyola Marymount University. And we brought together, I had 3 panels. One was a panel of law enforcement from Homeland Security, FBI, the LA County Sheriff, LAPD. And then I had a panel of nonprofits that were working with victims and survivors to assist them in their recovery out of the life. And then I also had a panel of elected officials. And I've worked very, for the last 5 years with the CSEC program in Los Angeles County. So we put on this forum, and we had about 300 Rotarians from our district attend. And that was the beginning of the education. It was a one-day seminar, and that began the journey almost 5 years ago. I respectfully encourage, and it has been encouraged also by Kimberly in particular, but I think we as Rotarians have to do our due diligence. We have to understand I am learning every day something new. I work on this issue every single day. And we have to understand statistics are not always accurate. So much of this is underground. We don't see all of it, but you need to do your research, understand what's going on. The statistics, I mean, there are US statistics that come out of the State Department, and you'll have local information, but you should really educate yourselves as you step into this. So I put together a task force, and it led after of course I spoke at all the Rotary clubs in my district and raised awareness, and people were stunned. They had no idea that this could happen to one of their children or one of their grandchildren. They just had no idea. And of course, between social media and the internet, it is so easy, besides the vulnerable population that Christina has talked about, who are already victims of households where there's domestic violence or sexual abuse or neglect. But our children are at risk as well. So I encourage everybody to do your due diligence on this task force as you're beginning. And then I noticed we've got district governors, on the call, and then this morning earlier on the call. It's important that you do work with your sitting governor and your governor-elect and your governor nominee, get their support or their feelings on this and what they will, so there's some continuity in how you develop this. Putting together the forum initially was sort of I brought in people from nonprofit organizations. I had representation from the Sept program and Rotarians who were just passionate about this issue. And we have continued to work. And the sitting governor for Los Angeles this year asked me in May, right before she began, if I would start a cause-based club focused on this issue. Rotary International now has created a new model for Rotary clubs, which is cause-based. So it could be homelessness, it could be domestic violence, and of course there's crossroads all over the map with all of these issues. So we started, I created a strategic plan in June, and in July, I put together a team of 6 from our district, 6 Rotarians who are very passionate about this issue and I've worked with before. And in August, we started promoting, and many of you may know that it takes 20 to charter a new club. And as of today, we have 13 applications just since August. We've been working through August. And again, what we're bringing to the table are representatives from the nonprofits in the Los Angeles region that are boots on the ground and work with this problem and issue. We have a representative, a supervisor from the Sept program in Los Angeles, which is the commercial sexual exploitation of children, and you've heard that term from Christina. One thing that I do want to emphasize is, and she mentioned it, children in California approximately 5 years ago, I don't know when the law was passed in Nevada, but in California, a law was passed, which really the legislation setting up the Sept program deemed minor children not able to consent to prostitution. And Christina mentioned this. So children are detained. And in Los Angeles, what is happening with the Sept program is that children are assigned an attorney, and the attorney, as quickly as possible, gets them into some sort of residential facility, but monitors their path out of the life. So we've brought all of these forces together in this new Rotary Club. And because I need coming to the table, I need people who are involved with this every day. And as Rotarians, even when we do global grants, we have to assess what the community needs, not what we think they need. So the people that are working boots on the ground every day on this issue, I want representation at the table in this new club. And then of course we are recruiting, not from Rotary already. We're not pulling from other Rotary clubs. We're going outside to folks that are passionate about this issue. And we will be chartering. I had a goal of March, but I'm sure we will be chartering sooner. So that's what I have to say. Hopefully I stayed in my 10 minutes, and there you go.
Thank you very much, Cozette. One of the points that Kimberly brought up, and when we had our conversation about a month ago, is that children who get involved in sex trafficking are from all demographics in the Las Vegas area. So they can come from North Las Vegas, they can come from Henderson, come from Paradise, or come from Summerlin, where our Rotary Club is located. So it knows no boundaries, and that's something that we need to understand. It could be your next door neighbor's child. It could be your grandchild. It could be a friend's child. You never know. And as Kimberly said, she was adopted, and her adopted parents didn't even know that she was involved in being a sex trafficking or victim until later on. So a lot of times families are not aware of what their children are doing out in the community.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Cozette.
I'm sorry. One little story. You know, there are so many stories. There are so many sad stories, heartbreaking. But one story recently, it's not a story. It's something that's going on right now. This 10-year-old child that when she was 5, custody was taken away from her mother, and they had the parents had joint custody, and because the mother was an addict, father received full sole legal and physical custody of the child. She was 5, and nobody realized until she was 8 that he had been trafficking his own daughter, selling his own daughter for sex from age 5 to 8 years old. I mean, you know, the stories are horrific, and and that was in Los Angeles. I mean, it's just unbelievable, some of the things that happen.
Okay, so let's open the floor up to questions that we might have of Kimberly or Christina or Cozette.
I have one question. I mean, I'm getting what you guys are saying, and obviously it's totally different than what most of us have been aware of in the past. I imagine there's some of the other kind, but this sounds like to be the prevalent. Has there been any kind of, and I don't know what the right word is, profile or something that people can be on the lookout for, certain ways of people acting, et cetera, that we can make aware for parents that if your child is doing these kind of things, you may want to take a second look?
And this is, I'll let Kimberly speak to this probably more proficiently, but there are trainings that, I mean, California now mandates education for 4th through 12th graders, as well as the faculty, staff, and of course, bringing parents on board. But there are signs, and maybe Kimberly, you can speak to what those signs might be. Like she said, she came home for dinner. How do you figure that out, that this is going on? Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, and I think Christina probably will have some input as well. So as Cozette said, so California and Utah both have passed legislation in the last few sessions that requires every 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th grader to receive education on human trafficking, and also teachers and administrators. And so that's actually a bill that I was working on for Nevada this session, but it costs money, and essentially I've been told by my sponsor that there's nothing that's going to cost money is going to be passed because of everything, and Nevada has no money. So we're going to put that in the back burner for now. But just speaking to that she mentioned. But as far as signs and symptoms, there's a plethora of different things, and it really takes, it really takes looking at the individual child. Like for myself, my exploitation started online, which is very common now, but this is back, in the AOL days. And so my exploitation started online, and then moved from online to offline. And so it's different whenever, it's a family member and things to that extent. To that point is that you don't have to just train parents, you have to train teachers and community members, because a lot of times, unfortunately, as she mentioned, it's familial trafficking. It's family member trafficking the child. And so you can't just depend on training the parents. But it can be everything from like, you know, if your child's withdrawn, it's kind of the same way of like, you know, is your child doing drugs? I mean, you have to learn kind of what the, you know, the signs are. Are they withdrawn? Are they hiding things from you? Are they, you know, disappearing at certain times? It's a different environment. Statistically, most of the time, it's going to be children that are coming out of homelessness, poverty, foster care, things to that extent. And so they're going to have different things to look for than just your normal child. That goes, you know, unfortunately, there's children at Bishop Gorman are being trafficked, and that blows people's mind, but it's happening. You know, so no matter what, you know, where you're at, it just kind of depends on the situation. And so it's really about getting an overall education of it's not what you think it is. And so by just having that knowledge of, hey, something doesn't feel right with my kid or something doesn't seem right, that's, you know, that you can start asking questions, you know, when to start asking questions versus you need to look for X, Y, Z.
No, I appreciate that, but all right, say I have a child and I'm suspicious or I'm concerned or whatever word you want to use. Where do I take them?
Well, you take them to either counseling, a counselor, or to police. I mean, it's you know, if you have actual reason to believe that there's something. I had a parent that called me 2 weeks ago. They found they had upgraded their teenager's cell phone, and had given their old phone to the younger child. And that younger child's like 12. And during that process, the younger child came to show them that there were some images and things on this phone that the 16-year-old had on there. And so they called me because they know what I do. And we've determined that their 16-year-old had been exploited off a website online and was being exploited by adult men and propositioned for sex, and started out with them saying, hey, just send me pictures, I'll pay you for pictures, and then went from there. And so it's you know, things like that. I'll let Christina go from there, but it's really you know, like I said, it's one of those things where as a parent, you know, something doesn't seem right, but most of the time it's going to be a community member or something like that additionally too. But if it's your own child, then, you know, you take them to counseling, you try to get them intervention services, you contact the Rape Crisis Center or, you know, or the National Human Trafficking Hotline or something. They'll connect you to services that are local to you and get your child. And most of the time they're going to send you to a counselor, and then that counselor is going to be able to talk to them. And then it also helps with law enforcement, because then you're not coaxing information at your child. The child, they know how to do like the conversation to where, you know, they can make it submittable and all this other stuff. So Christina, do you want to jump in?
I'll just say yes to everything she said. I actually want to pivot for just a second and share that there's an incredible resource that I hope you all will take a moment to look at. I mentioned that coalition, so the CSEC coalition. There, and if you're okay with this, it'll take 2 minutes. Can I just share my screen to show you all something?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, I'm going to show you the Division of Child and Family Services website. Okay, so can you all see my website or my screen? Mm-hmm. Okay, right here, and only because I was the coalition coordinator for several years, so I keep going back to this. But this is the website or the page for the Nevada Coalition to Prevent the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children. On here, on this side here, I gotta move you all over there. There's some toolkits, and there's a model protocol that has been come up, that has been created. And then there's toolkits that have been created as well. So there's prevention resource guide. And so a lot of the questions that you have that are valid, like what do I do if I have my child? A lot of work has been done by the coalition, which has survivors and a lot of different people spent the time actually doing a lot of the legwork of putting together what a toolkit would look like for communities and businesses how to reduce the demand, how to promote the trafficking hotline, a toolkit for communities of faith, for parents, caregivers, a toolkit for youth and social media, and you can see all there. I would encourage you, and certainly, you know, I would recognize that you all would like to create something for yourself, but I encourage you to spend a lot of time reviewing these documents so that you can put, and you can see a list of all of the members, right? So we've got people from the Attorney General's office and very well-seasoned people that are working in this space that put together this toolkit. So as you're trying to figure out how do we do something either for Nevada or for Southern Nevada, that you spend some time reading this and pulling from it things that you would like to, I mean, one of the best things you could do is to help take this information and carry it out to the community. Because I bet you a lot of people don't know that this exists. So there's a lot of information that you can spend on this website, a list of a toolkit for resources, a prevention guide, which I showed you, the model protocol, and then an actual strategic plan that has been identified for the next 5 years. So
Could you send this website to Michael so we can get on and look at it?
Absolutely, I will do that.
Appreciate that.
Yep. So it's there for you, and I encourage you, you know, some of the best things I like to ask people is let's do what I call is, collective impact work, where we all do work that's mutually reinforcing, but not that's off on the side and then somebody else is doing something that's in competition with, like, you know, where it's not coordinated. And so
it's a little bit of not reinventing the wheel.
A whole lot of that. Absolutely right. Let's just share it, and you know, obviously you can personalize it, but yeah, let's not reinvent the wheel. So I added in the chat box right now the link to that website. So spend time. There's an incredible amount of resources there.
Also, on our club's website, it's rotarysummerlin.org. On the left side of the navigation, there is a site now for our campaign. And if you click on that, there are various resources that I have found or located. And this, what Christina just mentioned, will go in that as well. So you can access that information right from there. The video of this meeting will also go on there. In addition, I have been in touch with Senator Christine Cortez Masto, who is one of our senators here in Nevada. She has been very much involved in sex trafficking. When she was Attorney General, she was responsible for having the legislature pass a number of laws regarding this. And on the national level, she is also heavily involved in working to get legislation passed on this particular issue and to make people more aware, but also to provide services, not only for the victims, but also their families and other people that are aware that they might have loved ones or friends of the family who are involved in this trade. And, you know, as we said, many times families are unaware of what their children are doing. And probably, as Kimberly said, if this family had not seen the old cell phone, they maybe would never have known what's happening with their older child. Any other questions for?
Electronic devices, parents, grandparents, you have to be so careful these days. Through social media, you know, it's just unbelievable.
And the thing is that you might prevent them from accessing this at home or on their cell phones, but you cannot prevent them from accessing it with their friends' cell phones or at their friend's house. You just don't know what is going on, you know. And today, because in most families, both parents are working, so a lot of times they may not be totally aware of what's happening in their children's lives. And it's really important to get involved and to know what's going on, especially when you are at work and the child's home after school from 3 to 6 or whatever it might be, to know what they're involved in, or to make sure that you have activities that they can participate in so that they don't get involved in this lurid side of society.
And I
I have
think preventative information too, from parents, grandparents, and ultimately through the law with faculty, teachers, but sharing ahead of the game, just like we've always warned our children, don't talk to a stranger, don't get into a car. I mean, in a delicate way, we have to, and it's a very young age that they are after these children. And so somehow we have to be talking to our children so that they're warned ahead of time.
I have a quick question. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I may have missed it, but as far as what kind of numbers do we have? You said that there are not such great statistics, but percentage-wise, what kind of numbers are the difference?
I have statistics for you.
The difference between, trafficked by strangers and trafficked by family members. Is there a kind of a percentage?
I don't have that percentage, but 96% of traffic victims are females. This is out of the U.S. State Department. Now, we can't really accurately get all of this information because it's so hidden. 82% are trafficked for sex, 11% for labor, 7% for other forms of trafficking. And the average age according to the U.S. State Department, could be different. In Nevada, it is 12. Christina mentioned 11 years old, and 50% of the trafficked victims are minor children.
Okay, and let me add to what Cozette just said. The FBI has identified Las Vegas as one of 13 high-intensity child prostitution areas. In 2017, their annual report estimated that there were 5,687 victims of child sex trafficking in Nevada. In 2018, the Impact Nevada Advisory Boards voted to prioritize the fight against human trafficking. Now, when you look at these statistics, those are the statistics that they actually gather because they know the victims have come to them or they have found the victims. There are probably hundreds or maybe even thousands of other victims who have not been reported to either their parents or to authority that we have no idea. So this could be double or even more. We have no idea. Even Christina or Kimberly may not even know.
The point of my question was to kind of understand, and maybe Cozette has a good idea of, because she has the task force that she put together, but where is the focus? Is the focus more on domestic abuse and that leading to trafficking, or is it all over the map, or is it more of a focus on there are strangers and there are groups that are doing this kind of trafficking? And so with regards of which nonprofits should we be looking for to partner with and to talk to them about what they do and all of that?
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna have to get a couple of things in. First, sorry, and I can't let it go. I'm sorry, Michael. When we start doing this work, we really want to steer away from saying child prostitute or child prostitution.
Right.
And that's, it's got a connotation to it that is, that's frowned upon by the community as a whole. And so we say victims of child sex trafficking or domestic minor sex trafficking. That's going to be important for the committee and for the organization to get used to saying when they're doing this work. Next, for Robert's question. So there's so many different dynamics to sit there to say, who does more, family or strangers? Well, first of all, it's kind of like, because I mentioned, when we say stranger danger, we taught for years kids stranger danger, right? But statistically, most kids are abused or kidnapped or molested by someone they know and trust, right? And this is the same way. So their children are not being kidnapped and forced into sex trafficking. That's not what's happening. Neither are adults. No one's being kidnapped and forced into sex trafficking. That's not how it works. Not in the United States, okay? So what happens is either it's a family member or someone in the household, or it's someone that's grooming the individual that they know and building a relationship of trust. And so like in my instance, as Michael said, my dad was actually law enforcement, and he worked at night, and so he slept during the day. And so although he was home when I got home from school, he was asleep, and my mother was working 2 jobs because law enforcement doesn't get paid very well. So I, in that 3 to 6 time frame, was on the computer talking to people on AOL chat, and from there, you know, things went from there. To Christina's point about how there's this intersectionality of victimization, I had been abused, had been molested by a neighbor when I was 5 and 6. And so that door had already been opened. So when I was 11 on the computer and people started talking sexually to me and trying to open that road, that door was already open for me because of that abuse from my childhood or younger childhood. And so it was an easy in for them to groom me into the trafficking world. And so although they were a stranger, I thought online that they were not a stranger. So, you know, you feel like you're a friend and you get to know them. Of course, as an adult, you would say that's a stranger. You don't know them. To me, it was not a stranger, right? Same thing with when you meet someone, if you're a foster child and you have run away from your home, your foster home, and you meet someone on the street, you don't associate them as being a stranger because you've known them for 12 hours and now they're your best friend because you're on the street together. Or if you are 14 and you meet a guy at the mall who's 19 and you think he's cute and y'all start hitting it off and he ends up being a pimp, but you now think he's your boyfriend after 2 days because, you know, you're 14 and want to have a boyfriend. And so this dynamic of, are they strangers, are they family, it gets really complicated. And so it's something that trying to qualify, I'm actually working with a few different research institutes here in the United States right now. They hire me as consultants and I help them work on the language they use. We're trying to do studies geared towards children in this realm. And that's one thing that we really struggle with, because we have to identify for them, you know, because to them, that's not a stranger. That's their best friend, even though they just met them. And so it's a different dynamic. As far as statistics go, it's really also hard with statistics because you have the FBI, the State Department, and the CIA, and the states all saying different things. They all have different statistics. They all have different reports. You literally have the FBI and the CIA will write a report on the same thing and have different numbers. The State Department will have different numbers from the FBI on the same exact population. The states will have a different number of populations. And I, pardon the kind of crude humor, but I kind of put it in the way of, you know, it's like trying to get data on what kind of porn people watch, because people aren't going to be honest with you, and you're never going to really be able to get that information because it's something people hide and keep secret, right? Because no one actually is ever going to really tell you their deepest, darkest secrets. And so you're never really going to be able to get factual data on that to specific individuals. And so it's very much the same way with trafficking, to where it's the deepest, darkest secret of people, even victims that are out of the life. There are still things that I don't talk about. There are still things I, you know, hold close to the chest. And I'm probably one of the most open survivors you will ever meet. And so it's one of those things where it's gonna always be hard to have facts, figures, and numbers in this work because of that. And it's just the nature of abuse, but that's what any kind of abuse or trauma, but specifically sexual abuse, is built around. Is that our abusers, whether it's a sexual assault or if it's a trafficking situation, have this ability to, we have the shame around it, where we don't always can get accurate information, because we as victims, have this society's shame put on us with sharing that information. But also you have to remember that perpetrators, whether it is the trafficker, i.e. pimp, or it's the buyer, the men purchasing sex, because there's a whole lot of them, that they're not only good at grooming the victim, the child, they are masters at grooming the people around them. That's what they do. They groom you, their friends, and everyone around them, that they are normal. The upscale husband, the upscale attorney, doctor. I was 11, 12, 13 being bought by doctors, lawyers, preachers, police officers, teachers. The list goes on. But society would look at them as, these upscale citizens, right? And so, but that's what they do. They're gifted in that ability to not only groom the child or the woman or the victim, they also groom the society and the world around them. That's their skill set. And that's why they don't have one victim. That's why there's always more than one, right? You hear these stories of, the senator got caught, abusing an intern, but then it turns into, they didn't just abuse one intern. For the last 20 years, they have 60 other interns that, now come forward. And you're like, why didn't someone talk before? Well, because society and culture has this picture that you're supposed to be quiet. But then once you rip the Band-Aid off and everything starts coming out, you realize they didn't just abuse the victims, they abused everyone around them. They abused everyone that was close to them and everyone that was looking at them, or groomed them to believe the image that they wanted to portray. And that's why it's so difficult for us to get statistics or to be able to really convey to people what the severity is in this subject matter, unless you've been through it and you just know, what you've been through and how the door rotates. Sorry, I'm a talker.
No, that's fine. We've almost gone an hour and a half, and this has been wonderful. We've had a lot of great information, a lot of great sharing from Christina, from Cozette, and from Kimberly. This recording, again, I will send out a link to it, and then it will be up on our website as well. We will have, the committee will meet again on the third Tuesday in October 20th, at 5 p.m. And at that time, the committee and who else wants to participate, we will have a lot to talk about and figure out exactly what approach and what way we want to take on this. Again, I want to thank everybody for their participation, their interest, and we are now moving down the road to create this awareness campaign by the Summerlin Rotary Club of Las Vegas. Thank you again. Have a nice rest of the evening.
Good night.
Good night.